Thanks to the team at NetEvents for coordinating this roundtable. I'm sure all of us would rather be in one of the very exotic locales that NetEvents is known for hosting their conferences, but we'll have to make do for our home or offices. We'll make do. I just want to say welcome to the panel here. You see their names up there. I will give each one of them a couple of moments to introduce themselves as we get a little further in. We have a great topic today that my company spends a lot of time looking at, and we have been since, I want to say, the early 2000s, when there was another big transition and migration happening, which is when we were starting to go from ATM, frame relay, and I guess private line networks into the world of MPLS. Well, now those MPLS networks are migrating, which we'll be talking about, to the new era of cloud networking. And so MPLS and the dedicated IP VPN market has had a lot of running room, but it's time for another transition, and this time to the world of cloud networking. So the first thing I want to do, the reason I'm showing this slide, is that the type of networks that we're talking about now are fully managed by a carrier SD-WAN services. Again, a truly managed service that all of the panelists here have to offer. Services that are aligned with the MEF. And this is a very big market. Worldwide here, you're looking at almost $40 billion for IP VPN services, including carrier managed services. Now, the carrier managed service market is still a small part of that, maybe around 5%, but certainly moving faster than the other types of services. Interesting points here. First of all, we've seen a resurgence of what we call the site-to-site VPNs with the new work from home paradigm over the last year. Second point is that the carrier managed SD-WAN services leaderboards that you may have seen from Vertical Systems Group will be released shortly. I'd love to have them here to show you, but we are just putting our final touches on them. And what we are seeing, which is consistent, I think, with a lot of the points we'll be making in this webinar, is that the top providers for carrier managed SD-WANs, US and worldwide, do overlap with the top MPLS providers historically. And that may be changing, and which we'll be talking about, but that's due to migration, meaning there's a high correlation between MPLS and where it's going. So how did carrier managed SD-WANs fare during this last year, which has been crazy? I have a timeline here that I can show you. So in 2009, you can see here, triple-digit growth. And I think all of our panelists here would agree with that. This was a booming market. 2020, again, this is a US timeline, but it does track worldwide. We saw the revenue growth drop down to about 17%. Now, that's still one of the bright spots for the overall networking market because this was a tough year. 2021, revenue growth is rebounding. We're seeing that already. I'm sure our panelists are seeing that. We'll hear from them shortly. And I know that you're all anxious to hear from this panel. So I have one more slide that I just want to share with you, and this will pop back up later in the conversation. This is a readout from 3 surveys that my company, Vertical Systems Group, has done of the managed service providers worldwide. Starting at the bottom, we asked the question, what are the top challenges for your organizations? This is pre-pandemic. These are strategic challenges, long-term, proactive. How do we deal with the rollouts pre-COVID? Big change that came around mid-2020 in the midst of the global pandemic. This was a major trigger for that forced a lot of transitions. The first is the migration to the cloud. And the second is the work from home and the work from anywhere solutions. Service providers that were just sort of dipping their feet into this market now had to manage this transition for their enterprise customers. And we're going to hear from them about how they did. And the third, now, beginning of 2021, the pandemic is subsiding. We hope. We're starting to see a movement again back to longer term planning for WAN transitions. We're starting to see service providers or managed service providers deal with backlogs. How do they get their enterprise customers where they need to be, multi-cloud, and the refocus again on IT transformations following the related shifts that we had due to COVID. And we got to think about the customer experience again, which is a great thing. So this is a great segue into the first conversation point that we have for our panel. And the first question here is, how has the global pandemic impacted the demand for network services? And what's the longer term post outlook? So I'm going to start here by directing this at Song from Tata, who's going to start here. I would love him to give a very brief overview of who he is and what he does for his organizations, and then we'll transition into the other speakers. Song, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Erin. Hi, everyone. My name is Song To. I am the VP of Product Management for Global Managed Network Services at Tata Communications. We serve enterprises around the world with managed network services. Let's get on this first question here, right? How has the global pandemic impacted demand for network services? Erin, I think the chart that you presented earlier really reflected what we saw in 2020, right? We came into the year having great plan, and the world turned upside down. I still remember traveling back from a conference right before all the lockdowns. And that was quite a reminder when people started masking up. And so it has impacted. Some enterprises had put some decisions on hold, and then they had to deal with enabling employees to work from home, working remotely. And now, I think, as you said, they're planning and continuing what we call digital transformation, which requires the network to transform as well. Long-term outlook is positive, right? Infrastructure needs to be refreshed. Network bandwidth needs to go up. All the IT systems and cloud migration that's been planned, now everyone's also looking at how do they go forward with it. That's what I see.
All right, well, thanks. I'm going to throw right over to Ashwath at Aryaka. Again, a brief introduction, and then maybe some comments there.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Ashwath Nagaraj. I'm a founder and CTO of Aryaka Networks. We build a new agile WAN. Many of you have heard of us. And as Song said, we're all in the space of giving you a managed network, which delivers productivity to your employees at the end, right? So I just look at the pandemic and I sort of break it up into really two parts, right? The first is the shock. There was a shock effect for a couple of months. And that shock, really, people were handling it. Some people were handling it by, buying more boxes to do remote access VPNs, patching it, Band-Aid, you can call it a lot of things, right? But I think what emerged from it is that the WAN has now transformed to a new topology. It's fundamentally changed, right? And a user can be at home, can be a branch, can be at a data center, can be at a headquarters. Your data can be in a data center, in the cloud, and it can be at home. So we've sort of made the WAN far more important than it ever was to that enterprise business, right? And I think the important thing here is, if you don't embrace this change, because this change is here to stay, this is not a temporary change. Not everybody is coming back to the office. A lot of people are never coming back to the office, right? So what does this mean? What is the power of this? The power really is that IT is now going to be the driver of business transformation. I mean, just look at all of that budget that's available. There are so many offices that cost so many dollars, so much money, that's going to get shut down. Where is that going to go? It is going to transform your business, right? So I think we'll go into a few examples with some of the other questions, but I think it's probably the most fundamental change in networking. And I think it's going to, in as much as it gives the sort of killing blow to some older networks, it actually empowers the IT organizations to deliver productivity to employees.
Great, thank you. Mike, over to you and a quick introduction, and then how do you feel about this question?
Well, thank you very much. As the slide shows, my name is Mike Frane. I'm the Vice President of Network and Security Product Management here at Windstream. Windstream delivers security and managed services, be it network or voice, to businesses across North America. We've had managed broadband integrated into enterprise networks since 2006. We've provided co-managed security platforms in the cloud since 2010, and have had a co-managed SD-WAN offering in the market since 2016. When I look at what's happened here over the last year or so, networks and connectivity are now more important than ever, right? As COVID-19 started to enter the standard lexicon, we saw many customers accelerate their deployments to deliver on the flexibility and adaptability that they knew they would need to weather the uncertain times ahead of them. And we saw a big uptick in the remote access needs of our customers. As your timeline showed, Erin, once the lockdown started, we did see a short slump in the deployments mid-2020, but have seen a resurgence in the last half of 2020, and our inquiries and sales of SD-WAN in the pipeline continue to build. We were very fortunate to actually outpace the 17% growth that was on the previous slide. Now, there are many out there who say that work from home is the new normal, but in my eyes, the new normal is really uncertainty. Customers see SD-WAN as a highly agile option that lets them right-size their network and their bandwidth at the locations as they shift their business and operational models. And I can tell you that the business and operational models are absolutely changing as a result of the last 12 months. As we look to the future, right, while a 100% work from home model isn't realistic, customers are going to look for a network solution that easily provides the flexibility and reliability for their physical locations, as long as their remote workforce, their partners, and their vendors. Combining SD-WAN and security in that as a service will fit that need very well. Because you said we wanted to be a little confrontational here, right? But in a collegial manner, I do want to push on something that Ashwath said. I really think that it's the business that's going to be the driving factor in network transformation, right? IT has traditionally been the keeper of the purse strings and the group that set the direction from a network perspective for the companies. But as we look at how the businesses and their operational model and how they reach their customers is going to change in the future, I really think that the business, right, the marketing, the product side of the businesses is really going to start to drive the network transformation, because it's through those, and both have said this, right? It's through that digital transformation, how they reach their customers, how they communicate, interact with their customers and their partners, is what's really going to drive the need for the network transformation.
Well, that's great. I'm just going to get my popcorn and wait for Ashwath. Go ahead. You don't need me.
I totally agree. I mean, all I'm saying is that today, the network, and finally the expertise for the network is the IT people, right, is so critical, and it's going to empower business. Think about it this way. Every time I shut down an office, I mean, and I'll give you an example. There's a very large company of ours who basically funded their entire WAN transformation by shutting down some of the key offices. So what I'm saying is now, the IT professionals are responsible for employee productivity. The budget's in the hand of IT, not in the hands of the facilities people, right? I mean, some of these, you go to the central London offices of some top companies, I mean, they're spending millions and millions of dollars a year. You were looking for money to fund a transformation, and guess what? The pandemic has slowed down the industry. Yes, some industries have done well, but most are actually still struggling, right? But they need the transformation. Where's the money coming from? It has to come, I think, from the IT folks coming up with creative ideas on how they can really transform that, the needs of the business. You still meet the needs of business, but you don't need some of those things in the past, like the facilities, et cetera, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. Completely agree that the changing operational model is going to drive the network. Completely agree.
Absolutely right.
Song, anything to add?
Well, I think I'd like to add that I agree with these points, right? But I think the reality is transformation didn't stop, whether the offices shut or the pandemic was in the middle of raging, and it's still in some areas, right? In fact, during 2020, we implemented SD-WAN for one of the pretty famous international airlines, right? One that the planes weren't flying, hardly any of them were flying, but they took on SD-WAN, integrated the omni-channel contact centers and data center worldwide on SD-WAN, right? This is an amount of capital outlay that they put out while everything else is having a whole lot of challenges. They see this as a critical steps of setting up the infrastructure for their future business. Right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that pops up in our research all the time is, and it seems so simple, which is every time an enterprise transitions one of their applications to the cloud, away from a local data center, away from servers that are sitting in the basement, whatever it might be, this transition moves a little bit faster. And the work from home that got forced on these enterprises, that really kicked that into gear. And we saw a lot of the legacy applications that were holding back some of this transformation start to really go away. So interesting transition. Anyone else have anything to add before we can move on? We can stay here. No? Okay. All right. So I have another question here that when we looked at the structure of this webinar, I thought the way to look at it was, all right, let's talk about the overall transitions that our panelists are seeing, which we just did. And then how do we support enterprises where MPLS is still the VPN of choice? Meaning these are the enterprises that have had MPLS maybe for 20 some years. They're the ones that came from Frame ATM private lines, and they're following this natural migration path, and they love their MPLS. And this is something that comes up over and over again in our surveys. It might be expensive. It might be a bit inflexible. However, it meets that 5 nines type of needs that a lot of enterprises really need for their applications. So we want to focus on the ones that have MPLS, love MPLS, and what are we doing with them? So I'll start here. Mike, I'd love to have you start here because I know Windstream has a broad service offering within North America of customers that utilize MPLS services and also you're offering the hybrid services and the new era cloud services. So let's start with you.
Thanks a lot, Erin. I still remember reading articles in 2015 and 2016 about how MPLS was dead now that SD-WAN was available.
For the record, my firm never wrote those articles.
I was going to say, I might or might not have actually authored one of those articles. Maybe not as strong as dead. But,
it's $40 billion worldwide, and it's been hovering there for a while. Might still be flat, but it's still there. Okay.
It's still there, yeah. The reality of the market is that MPLS will have a long tail, right? There are still customers out there who rely on TDM connections for the functioning of specific applications. And there are many reasons for that, right? In some verticals, the regulatory environment may necessitate the use of MPLS. Some applications have been specifically designed to work over the MPLS network and might not be readily portable to the cloud. Mm-hmm. Well, in others, there may be a strong emotional attachment to the way that the network has always worked.
There is.
But in any case, right, MPLS is going to be around for a long time. We have thousands of customers and tens of thousands of sites on SD-WAN today, And while the technology has absolutely enabled a migration from MPLS, believe me when I say that there is no easy button. The migrations take careful planning and time to execute, because it's not just about simply swapping out one network technology for another. In order to fully realize the capability and the potential of SD-WAN, it can also require a shift in mindset, right? An application model, as well as in some cases, the operational model of the business, which is, I think, one of the things we're seeing in today's day and age over the last year, right? Now, when we started to roll out SD-WAN, I would say that more than 90% of all of our networks were in a hybrid MPLS and internet model. We combined the two transport types together, use SD-WAN over the top to control the traffic flow. Now, as time has progressed, we're probably more in the 60 to 70% range now. So there is a growing comfort with enterprises and organizations of moving to an internet model with SD-WAN as the overlay. But we still see that the predominant model is a hybrid model with MPLS. Now, Windstream does, as you said, we deploy cloud-based SD-WAN as our primary offering. That's the deployment model that really provides that delivers on the maximum potential of the SD-WAN technology, right? You look at DMPO, forward error correction, advanced security, and connectivity to the cloud. That solution delivers the reliability and the security that businesses are looking for today as they make their transition. Now, when customers have MPLS, either with Windstream or with other providers, we're able to connect them either in our cloud core or at hubs throughout their network, right? Which allows their applications to perform as they need, but still imparts much of what I say is the SD-WAN goodness on the other applications and on their network in general. And it's really this flexibility that provides the customers with the choice to continue to leverage their MPLS network while allowing them to migrate their sites off MPLS and onto the internet at their own pace, right? We don't force customers into it. Well, I believe that the future of networking applications is in the cloud. As a managed service provider, we absolutely need to support our customers on that journey because no one's at the same place. No one wants to move at the same speed. And it's really going to require that the managed service provider model and a partner like Windstream that is accountable for their success in that migration.
Thanks. Ashwath, I want to hear from you as the provider here on the panel that does not have a legacy, a long tail, as you said, legacy base of MPLS. Love to hear how you.
So you know what? You said controversial. Let's be controversial, right?
Yes, please do. Please do.
The king is dead. Long live the new king. Right. So right. MPLS is dead. But I think we're sort of mixing two things here, right? MPLS is a way of connecting sites, right? Mm-hmm. But what MPLS brought to companies, to organizations was, we said it earlier, reliability, stability, quality, and security, right? And a lot of these are also a question of the topology. I don't think it's all cloud. I think that the hybrid network of data centers, keeping your private data, clouds and SaaS applications where easy transformation of your Office 365s of the world, those are the ones that are going to be the fast moving changes, right? But the hybrid network remains. And what's killing MPLS, and every now and then a killer app comes along. And to me, mm-hmm. the killer app right now is that you can't have 40%. First of all, we all agree, you're not going to put an MPLS to everybody's house. It's never going to happen. Right? You're never going to put a box, and you're not going to put a rack inside a person's house, and they don't need that much heat. Nothing else. Boxes, racks, and so on. So the home user is now, the home worker is going to be 40% of all the total number of hours of work. Yes, manufacturing sites are not going to go where people are going to come there. Your data center is going to keep data. All of that's true, but then you have to incorporate this other 40% into your network. And I think that is really where MPLS struggles, right? Now, but I'm not saying that those things that were being provided by MPLS, that's that reliability, that stability, that quality, they're absolutely required. Right? I think that this really means that the world has to move to a new network. Now, MPLS was built for a very smart technology. And that said, I'm going to have a layer 2 last mile to connect those POP and that excellent network I have. And I think the way Aryaka approached this is that we want to bring MPLS to you, but we want to bring it to a POP near you, not to your house, right? If you have to bring it to the house, it's very hard. There are hundreds and thousands of people all over the world. We just bring it to a POP near you and deliver it. And we call it cloud delivery in the sense that it's the same concept as a cloud. Instead of having to build it yourself, it's offered to you as a service, right? So MPLS is great, but there's a new king, and we have to find out who that king is. But at the end, the network has changed forever, and I don't think MPLS fits that market as a network.
Song, before I jump in, I'm going to give it to you.
All right. You know, not a whole lot of disagreement with the two panelists before me here, right? MPLS is part of the enterprise WAN architecture today. You know, the customers that I'm serving, just take an example, one beverage manufacturer, global beverage manufacturer. They went from about 60% traffic site to site, which tells you that it was mostly MPLS.
Mm-hmm.
And during the contract period, they reached to about 30 or slightly under 30% still site to site. The rest of it is all cloud traffic because they have moved their applications to cloud. And in that situation, the dominant architecture of the network is a hybrid network with SD-WAN over.
Mm-hmm.
I think more and more of the enterprises will be heading in that direction. Some of them will start off, I think, pretty aggressive, saying I'm going 80, 90% to cloud. In that situation, that hybrid network will have a lot less MPLS in it. But I think there were questions being asked in here too, right? The reason why MPLS stays is because some of those applications and the data center architect, some applications are still sitting in the data center. Some applications are still very sensitive to jitters, latency, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And you could not, especially if you have a globally distributed estate, you could not switch straight over to internet and hope that everything works perfectly.
Right.
So it's a transition, and I'm not out there actively killing off MPLS for my customers, but if they're ready and they're looking for the agility, then there will be SD-WAN plus a mix of underlay that's probably more internet than MPLS.
Yeah. So I think an interesting point that pops up, and it goes back to Ashwath, which is something I always like to emphasize, is that MPLS, yes, a connectivity technology, but it's sometimes used incorrectly as talking about a TDM access type of technology, which of course we know it's not is, but is not. Our research, I mean, this transition has been happening for a while, which is and it was driven by more bandwidth requirements, right? So you had T1 or E1 access to MPLS networks for years and years. You're talking thousands and thousands of enterprise sites. Where is that going? It's going to zero. And we've seen that transition for many years, where the low speed access for T1 and below access to MPLS has been dropping off, and either those sites are going to another technology or they're being upgraded to another layer, Ethernet DIA to the MPLS network. When you have Ethernet DIA to an MPLS network at a very high speed, that's a technology that works, and the customers really like that. So you're seeing the low speed drop off, and that is ripe for this SD-WAN transition. The higher speeds at the data center, centralized headquarter locations have sort of remained, and then we're talking the hybrid network. That's the first point I wanted to make. The second point, which is talking about who's the new king, or what are we doing here, and it's an entire different paradigm for networking. I think the name might be just called software-defined networking. This SD-WAN transition, we love it. It's a great technology. But when you look at bringing all of the networking closer to the edge, as Ashwath was talking about, whether it's MPLS-like, whether it's cloud access, whatever it is, it gets closer to the edge. And then we have big, strong, fast access technologies that that terminate right there and let the cloud take over. So throwing that out to the three of you, I don't even know who to direct it to, but what do you think about just the software-defined networking aspect of it? Someone's got
Erin, are you saying that SD-WAN is a transitional technology?
well, that was one of my
also
sub
go to
questions.
do
I want to throw
worse?
that right out. Is SD-WAN something that we're going to see for a transitional amount of time until we truly get to what we call software-defined networking? Silence?
Yeah. Let me tell you. Sorry, Mike, you just started off. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think to say that SD-WAN, which is software-defined wide area networking, is not part of software-defined networking seems a little
No.
strange. Right? I think it's
certainly part of it, but to have
but
this
not the whole thing.
definition of carrier managed though. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the model, everything's going to be software defined. Everything already kind of is software, right? It's just where and how you orchestrate all that together is really going to be, I think, the evolution of what we're seeing here, right? And the different components of the network. So I would absolutely say that yes, I do see the shift to software defined networking, and it's obviously been going on for quite a while. It started in the data center, right? Then hyperscale compute, and then the WAN. Now it's moving into the branch. So you see the core tenets of that managed infrastructure. Because it really, in my mind, it's the managed infrastructure from where the customer is, where the consumer is of the application and the application, and the race is going to be to handle that infrastructure as one piece and make it simple for the end user to consume and manage, or manage it for them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the buzzword SD-WAN has been sort of overused by everybody, right? In one case, to me, it's sort of like a get out of jail card, right? You have a legacy network, you need to keep going. It's revenue, right? But I think, as Song said, I think very appropriately, that budget is moving, from that 70% to MPLS to 30% to MPLS. That's happening, right? And what is that network of the future that's going to really power that? I think there's going to be two of them. There's a super cost sensitive model where the internet's going to have to do everything, whether you like it or not. And then there's the productivity sensitive model, which is going to be have to gravitate towards a network that actually offers whatever characteristics MPLS offers today. And Song mentioned that. He said, look, the internet is not going to work very well in a global environment. But if you really don't care about that SLA, it's fine. If you do, it's not going to work. So you need a new architecture, right? What is that? We'll see. At times going to tell. But certainly I think, Erin, one of the things you mentioned really there is that the bandwidth needs, and you look at people building equipment for internet, oh my God, they're going to be doing really well. Everybody is sitting on a Zoom call at home, right? Before we were looking at DSL modems, and said, okay, if I could get a little bit of jittery video, I was so excited about it. Now we've got to look at each other, right? That just completely, and we have to do it interactively. So the bandwidth needs of this world are just going through the roof. And it's not coming only from branches, it is coming from everywhere, right? So I think it's a good thing for everybody, right? It's just that, there are going to be two different flavors. Price sensitive, everybody's price sensitive, but price critical and quality critical. And there's going to be niches on both sides, which is both extremes, and somewhere in the middle, we're going to have a mix. Some places you require a lower SLA, some places you don't.
Song, back to you. We kind of jumped in on you.
No, I think that's actually very good discussion, right? And I kind of agree with that sub question that you asked, Erin, and all the points raised here. In some ways, right, WAN was very branch focused, and SD-WAN started out also pretty branch focused. Of course, then everybody put security and all these things, and quite a few of the vendors are now also enabling remote users as part of the SD-WAN solution. But at this point, do you still call those things SD-WAN, or is it just really evolving to some kind of software-defined network that, yes, there's probably still a controller, there's probably multiple type of transport, And to Ashwath and Mike's point, different kind of applications that require different kind of transport. But I mean, is the configuration still focused on, traffic failover between 2 links or 3 links? Or is it going to be a lot more like just let the network take the application where it needs to go, fastest, most secure way?
Yeah.
Right? That's not what SD-WAN's defined as today.
Nope, it is not. So that's why I brought up, is it a transition? Is it just part of the whole? But I think we got some great feedback on that from all of you to keep us sort of on schedule. I don't want to get my hand slapped. We're going to move on to another question, another sec. Now focusing on, we sort of hit the high level. Then what do we do about all those MPLS folks out there? And how about we look at it from a different aspect now, which is if you're coming to it from a completely, I guess, greenfield environment, or now we're looking at, we've migrated. What are the benefits? What are the challenges here to just look at this as a clean slate? If you have new enterprises coming on, what do they look like? What do we give to them? What are they asking for? And I'm going to direct this at Ashwath to start. And I'd love to hear about specific verticals, any specific use cases. And one other thing is new competitors. If it's a cloud only solution, meaning you don't have to worry about MPLS, who do you see as trying to take away the traditional networking dollars? So anyway, over to Ashwath.
Yeah, so I think the theme to me here is this is really the new enabler, right? I mean, let's go backwards and say you've got all these offices, you've got really to transform to a lot more home users, a lot more cloud applications, right? And I'll go over an example. But the power of it is really that there's a lot of sunk, not sunk, actually, a lot of ongoing operating costs for all these facilities. And that's a lot of dollars. And that can power a lot of change, right? And that change is really coming to transform the application, move the application as a cloud, improve your application. That's where these dollars are going to go. And I think there's another huge value of the new era of networking, right? I mean, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. For us to hire a good security engineer, a good networking engineer, right? It's twice the cost of hiring it in Boise, Idaho, right? But today, think of the HR people love the IT folks because they said, hey, I don't need to add a facility or space here. I don't need to spend this kind of money. I can get the right quality of engineer somewhere else. So it sort of allows the organization to naturally distribute. We've sort of broken those myths that you have to have a location, everybody has to come here and everybody has to work. For a whole year, we've done it, and we've done pretty well with nobody coming to the office, right? Leave out manufacturing in countries where they've already managed to solve the COVID problem a lot better than we have here. But so I think this is an opportunity, right? I mean, the opportunity is really for the CIO to rethink that entire corporation, the footprint, and how they can empower the rest of the business by making change. And I'll give you a very good example. We have a large logistics, fuel logistics company. You go to an airport, you're going to be, your aircraft is getting fueled by one of these companies, right? We started a transformation of about 170 sites. It's about a few months before and it's a Fortune 100, before the pandemic hit. 170 sites going away from MPLS. There are 32 data centers, and things are going along, chugging along beautifully, right? And then the pandemic hits. They could have, gone into a funk and said, hey, oh my God. But on the other hand, they just came back and they completely redid the plan. But the new, I think, Mike mentioned earlier, he said the only thing we know for certain is there's going to be change, right? So if you can embrace that change, you can use that to redirect your plan in the direction of the future rather than how do I get it back to the past, right? And these people transformed it. Their expectation is that about 70% of the people will not need office space anymore. But those 70% of the people are going to need twice as much bandwidth because they're going to be moving, right? They went from 32 data centers to, I think, half a dozen, 4 or 6, I'm not sure exactly how much. So the amount of money they save, they shut down their headquarters, buildings, and so on and so forth in certain areas where they, instead of needing 2,000 people sitting in a place, they need only the corporate face. That's, a couple of hundred people. All of that has actually made that business, which struggled, if you look at the business of fuel and supply and all that stuff, is a lot harder in this time. But IT made those changes to adapt and put them in the future where, when all of this comes back, they're not spending half as much on all that IT, right? And they're using that to transform their entire business. So I think we've got to look at this as a benefit, right? And the challenge, the fact that now you're basically been kicked in the pants. You've got to solve the problem. You can't just sit back and say, no, it's all coming back. So the forcing function of having to move has actually enabled doing a lot of good things. And I really believe that all of us here are sort of a little bit in the new era of networking, right? All the 3 companies represented here. And I think we sort of stand to benefit from this because we are empowering the change for the future as opposed to retaining the past.
Agreed. I mean, as you said, I think all of you reiterated that earlier, that networking is just so much more important now, right? You used to be able to just go downstairs and kick something and it would work again. Now, if you lose I'd rather lose my power. I'd rather lose power than you're right. Anyway, which one of you wants to jump in again? Talking about it's a clean slate, brand new. What are we looking at now?
Yeah, I mean, Erin, I would absolutely agree with you. The only thing on UPS at my house is my networking. Right, it's the router, it's the cable modem, so I can stay up and working. The furnace will turn off, the microwave won't start, but my network will stay up at the house because as we all point out, right? This is our new office.
It's our new office.
Working. I mean, Ashwath talked about a lot about the goodness of moving to a cloud network or an SD-WAN. I want to talk a little bit here about the challenges, right? So I said we've got quite a few customers and sites deployed, and it's been a learning experience over time. I will say, so when it comes to talking to customers about who've had MPLS traditionally, right, TDM or Ethernet based, and are moving to something in a more hybrid model with maybe you've got cable in there, you've got HFC, you've got cellular. It's ensuring that so the education piece aspect to that, right? It's ensuring that they understand that unlike TDM or Ethernet service, right, where if they say it's available, right? Cable and cellular and some of the other technologies just aren't like that, right? So educating them so that they understand, all the systems and everything said it should be available, but it's not. So there's a different access type we have to bring in. There's more uncertainty in the aspect realm when you start to bring broadband and cellular in. I can tell you we've got customers who are we know one quite recently who was a bank that we're deploying, and they were very they had bad cell coverage, right? And when we got there, it's because they had put the cell antenna underneath their bank vault. Right?
Oh,
so
great idea.
Not a great place to put your cellular radio underneath a big hunk of metal. But it's that type of education that has to go on, right? And it's also the education, and Ashwath talked quite a bit about the cost savings and how you shift money around to make this work, right? Because there's a lot of hype from the vendors themselves about how much SD-WAN is going to save you, right? But in reality, we find customers spend about the same or maybe even a little bit more, right? It's really the conversation is about the value that you're getting, right? You're moving from 100 meg MPLS connection to SD-WAN with maybe DIA Ethernet at 50 megs and a broadband connection, and so it's going to cost you about the same, but you've got 10 times more download than you had before. You've got resiliency built into it. You've got dynamic multipath optimization, so your applications will run better. So it's that shift in the discussion from it's going to save me a bunch of money to the value that the network is bringing is also a piece of the education. And then finally, I'd say less so now, But we for those who are looking at a greenfield environment, don't try and make it work like MPLS work.
Right.
That's
Again, the mind shift.
That's not what the new technology is there for. We've had customers, we've had experiences where, like I said, especially at the beginning, where they wanted the SD-WAN to work just like their MPLS was working, and so they lost a lot of the functionality that SD-WAN brought. And we were able to work with them on their journey. As I said earlier, right, it's a journey for everyone. So we worked with them on their journey to kind of let go of the emotional attachments, as I mentioned before some aspects of MPLS, and let the technology work, right? Let it run, let it do what it's supposed to do, and then we can tweak it, right? Once we get in, if it's not working the way that we want. But I would say, those three things from an educational perspective is, kind of some of the challenges, because you'd asked about the challenges that enterprises are going to face in the new era.
Yeah. Well, I think the notion that SD-WAN was going to be quick, cheap, and easy got quickly dispelled. I was out there for a while. Anyway, so Song, we'd love to hear from you.
Certainly. So I think we talked about benefits of adopting SD-WAN, right? One of our customers, Visteon, for example, with it, they were able to improve the user experience and gain agility and gain business flexibility, right? This is all true in a sense that you decouple from the inflexibility of legacy network. But now this transition has its other challenges. I mean, we've seen these with other customers. For example, as a managed service network services provider, we typically work with the network team at the customer. And traditionally, they didn't care much what application right on top of the network. So when you come in and say, what's the most important application? Where are they going? Where is the application hosted? Initially, that becomes slightly of a difficult conversation because they had to go find out. They don't know. Like, I got the networks all working, right? Everything goes into the data center. Why is it now so complicated?
Right.
That was one of those transitions that has to go through. The second one was actually interesting, just playing on this question you're asking here, cloud networking. Even with SD-WAN, if you just implement a bunch of so-called internet breakout, it doesn't necessarily help you reach the cloud or SaaS application better, right? Depending on where your, I guess your users are, they're all in one small little area, and the application, the SaaS application is hosted right there. It's pretty easy. As we serve global customers, cloud networking, if you're using AWS in Amsterdam and half of your users are in India, for example, it's not so easy, not so clean, even if you use MPLS, right? So yeah, that's the challenge. I mean, those are some of the things that we got to work through as a journey through design and evolution, even when you get to SD-WAN.
Song, do you see, as the transition has begun to this new era of cloud networking, do you see a different set of competitors coming in vying for the networking dollars that has traditionally been spent on Tata or Aryaka or Windstream? Because I'll ask each one of you, do you see a new set of competitors?
Well, I guess they're not new in a sense, right? They become, at least to me anyway, both competitors and partners. Because as I serve global customers, and you touch on that, Erin, right? The last mile part of it, the access part of it, typically they can buy it on their own from someone else. But for a global enterprise, a lot of them will say, let me go to one managed service provider to help me deal with this. And yes, I know I can buy a whole bunch of access from anybody, but let me get it from one party that put together partners as well as their own network. So I have one single neck to choke. So, yeah, I mean, I don't see that, you know, this is dramatically changing.
Okay. Either of the other two, do you see a different set of providers knocking on your door?
So yeah, let me start. A couple things. I think we look at ourselves as one of the new providers knocking at the other people's doors, right?
Mhm.
So absolutely, yes. Obviously, I think Song's got a very good point. It has to be a single throat to choke. This new model of consumption is really about simplification of my life as an enterprise and pushing the problem into one other place, right? So that's all true. I think the big thing that I think still is a little bit gray, it's that four-letter word that we said we wouldn't use, spelled SASE, but that there's the most important thing that happens when you move out of MPLS, in my mind, is security, right?
Absolutely.
Or the change in your security posture, right? And
Mhm.
you can get peddled snake oil as security, but unfortunately, the consequences of that are very, very severe, right? I mean, you can lose your crown jewels can be lost, right? And we've seen time and again, your credit card information gets lost. So that's a very, very important consideration. And there's a good reason why a lot of the enterprises which are SLAs, conscious about MPLS quality, reliability, and so on and so forth, also have to look at the best of breed security. So the vendors that come in really need to be able to offer their, the enterprises, a solution that includes best of breed security. If it doesn't, then really you're creating a big hole into which every hacker in the world can come in.
Sure.
Under the guise of an efficient network.
Yep. Mike?
Yeah, I would kind of echo what Song said a little bit. We're not seeing new competitors into the marketplace recently. There was a shift when SD-WAN first entered the market, right? Where you had some smaller players get a foothold, right? Because if you historically an MPLS network, right, you need to be one of the big names if you're gonna sell someone an MPLS network. But if you're just providing them the overlay and you're managing the overlay and the underlay is separate, we did see some, I would not say net new, right? But we saw some historical vendors transitioning in the services that they provided, right? But it's still for companies like Tata and Windstream and Aryaka, it's still ensuring that you're looking at the breadth of services in the whole solution, right? That is really where those more point solutions are going to be challenged to get to some type of scale. I prefer saying back to pat rather than throat to choke, but we all know that the throat choking happens. So it's really, I would say it's an evolution in the competitive space rather than any net new entrance into the market.
Okay. The reason I was asking the question is because on the business, I guess the smaller level of customers, business customers, there has been a bit of a shift there because as we disaggregated the underlay and the overlay, as you all were talking about, it allowed a new breed of competitor to come in, one that some systems integrators, some resellers that have done a decent job at that level. I was pushing it to see if you've seen any of that at the higher end of the enterprise networking market, and I would suspect, I guess the answer was no at this point. Okay, all right. So we are coming to the end of our discussion. So I have one last roundup question for you all. It's going to be quick. This is sort of your last moment to have some closing remarks. Short, pithy, to the point. I'll focus it on two things. Number one, we have an esteemed audience here of journalists from around the world. What do you want them to take away from this? What is the one point, if they're going to be writing an article over the next day or so, what do you want them to take away? That's the first one. And I'd really like it, I think we're going to flip back to that slide that I have, is if you could, oh, that one right there. If I added another bubble on the top that said mid 2021, what are the top challenges? Let's focus it there. Like if you can put your future looking hat on, what do you think the couple of bullets would be if they'd be any different there for mid 2020, 2021 as we're working forward? So I'm going to start with Song right here, since you were the first to answer a question here. Quick takeaway. What do you want the journalists to remember you by? And, mid-year 2021 challenges.
Well, so yeah, to remember me and Tata Communications by, I mean, we consider ourselves the digital ecosystem enabler. That means I'm not a vendor that comes in and drop off a bunch of boxes and then, come back in 3 years and say, do you want to renew the contract, right? We offer not only network services, but also unified communication, managed security, managed cloud and hosting services for our enterprise customers globally, right? Our network cover over 149 countries. Now, looking forward to mid 2021, I think some of these transformation and the pickup of digital transformation from a slightly slower pace of 2020 will continue. And cloud-centric architecture would probably be more, play a bigger role, right? I mean, Ashwath and Mike, I think we all kind of have not pointed a finger to say that's what it's going to look like. Of course, the market's hyping certain technologies, but I think it's the outcome that people are going after, right? You still have application that requires site to data center connection. You have a lot more cloud application. You need security that's ubiquitous and zero trust maybe. But I mean, what does that look like? I don't think it's a vendor name. I don't think it's one product name that allow you to achieve that. And a managed service provider would be a partner to help you achieve that.
All right, not one vendor name, not one product name. Look for the managed service providers. Ashwath, over to you.
So, if I could give a few takeaways, one is the topology has changed. The WAN is now the center of your enterprise business, right? And that's partly because of all the home use and so on and so forth, right? So as an IT professional, as somebody who is, the CIO of a company, you are right now empowered to transform the business much more than you were before, because you can give them the tools to really change the structure of your business because of the new world, right? Second thing is, I think MPLS is dead, but MPLS is not dead in concept. I mean, at the end, we need those elements of MPLS, but that budget is moving out. You can use that. Now, if you need those qualities, we said reliability, the security, the stability, and all that, the quality it brings, that's where I think people like Aryaka are really interested in talking to you, because we feel that all of those are critical in certain spaces, and we want to address that, right? And I think the third one is, for all of us, right? It's actually, I mean, if I look at the next bubble, right, it is really an expansion of the network. I mean, we talked about bandwidth increasing. I mean, and Mike was talking about, okay, now the problems at home. So the kind of problems we're going to have to face are changing. We're going to have to deal with people putting their, cellular service box in the wrong locations, things like that, right? So it's still, there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, you think about things like Starlink that's coming up, 5G and so on. These are all going to be enabled by enterprises funding it, not only by home users watching Netflix, right? So I think that the opportunity for building the new network, that new topology, has a lot of good technologies that are just on the point where it can be consumed, right? A DSL, hard logistically to put in, cellular, expensive, okay, 5G, Starlink, globally available potentially, right? That's the other thing. I think we were talking about, hey, these things are not available in parts of the world, but some of the new technologies, they're actually going to spread faster in those parts of the world where they don't have any DSL, they don't have the infrastructure. So I think that's a great thing for sort of leveling this, the playing field around the world.
Okay, well, thank you. Mike, you have, I guess, the honor of the very, very last word before questions.
Boy, I appreciate that.
It wasn't on purpose, it just happened.
So I mean, I can tell this distinguished audience that there's a tremendous amount of interest right now, right? Operating models across industries have changed dramatically due to the last 12 months, right? SD-WAN and cloud security are going to give customers, enterprises, organizations, the ability to adapt to the new normalcy of uncertainty. We've talked a lot about how there's a shift to work from home or X from home now. There'll be a shift back, but there'll be a big hybrid piece of that. So you're still going to need the connectivity at home, and you're going to need the connectivity in the branches, right? It's not an either or model going forward. In fact, in many ways, it obviously becomes much more complex for the enterprise to manage. And there's a shift in where the applications are being consumed. As more applications move to the cloud, Ashwath mentioned this, it's going to reduce the necessity of the enterprise network, right? Why, as the enterprise, why do I want to bring my end users into my data center if all I'm going to do is send them out to the cloud, right? It's a complete waste of resources. Now, as far as predictions, right, for mid-year 2021, I think in the post-vaccine era, we're going to see an acceleration and an uptick in the adoption of SD-WAN and cloud security, and that 4-letter acronym that Ashwath mentioned earlier, which is SASE. And I think we'll quickly return to pre-COVID installation levels, and then shortly thereafter we'll eclipse that, because this model, right, of SD-WAN, of cloud security, of remote access, is the model that's going to allow the enterprises and organizations to deal with the new certainty of uncertainty.
Great. Well, thank you. Those are great takeaways. I want to thank all three of you for that.